but trying to find that tactful difference, that tactful point in communicating and helping people get better, that's always been something that's been a bit of a challenge in World of Warcraft.
It's July 31st, 2024. You know why you're here, so let's kick this off right and introduce the players. Hey, I'm Jarazar, a WoW esports aficionado.
Hey guys, I'm Treesap Jake, and I'm glad I didn't re-roll to Ellie after those nerfs. and today we've got 3 people with us, in fact, to talk about something really cool. We've got Moosin, Winters, and Visnar with us, who I thought could kind of let you guys know who they are. So starting with Moosin.
Yeah, good evening. So I'm Moosin. I've been playing since beta, and I'd like to think that I've been competitive in PvP since getting stuck in a Rathai Valley there for a couple of days. But hey, I really only started getting into the competitive about since Legion.
Cool. Oh, Winters.
And, Winters, yeah.
What's up, guys? My name's Winters. I go by Winters in game. I've been playing WoW since Burning Crusade around about. I'm mainly an RPG player. I got into RPGs around like MOP, WAD, and that's really all I play nowadays is RPGs. I play tanks and healers. I stream a lot. You can find me on Twitch at Bloodbound Winters, and I've been playing at high-rated RPGs for a couple seasons now, hitting 2,400 several seasons in a row.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. And Visnar?
Hey, what's up, man? Visnar. I've been playing since Classic. Not really competitive, casual into the 1900 range, mostly RPGs, and then looking to get a little more competitive going into War Within with threes, the RPG queues, and a little bit of raiding in Mythic Plus. You can find me at, once War Within kicks back off, it's Visnar_ on Twitch.
Oh, fantastic. I know that kind of felt like the school register a little bit, but I feel like definitely have a much better breadth of what you guys have done. And I think it's really awesome that we've got such a vast, quite a bit of difference in everyone's sort of like experience and what they enjoy. But first things first, Garrisal, what have you been up to in the last couple of weeks?
Well, honestly, so I got my Warlock back out. I started doing Affliction again. Yeah. And I tell you, walking into random battlegrounds with season 3 honor gear at the end of season 4, that was rough. I was not gonna lie, that was really rough. But it was luckily it was BG week, so geared that out pretty quickly. Only took a few battleground losses before I was able to really start to feel like I was actually hitting people with something. Actually watch health bars. I remember the first BG, there was I think a Windwalker monk, and I had all my dots rolling and I barely saw their health bar move. So it was sad. God. Yeah, but it worked out. It was really fun. Had a good week doing that, and I joined because the cross realm guilds are up and running now. So I joined the Notorious Guild over on Tichondrius because they are a very PvP centric guild, and they seem like they're going to do a lot of good things. They have a lot of great plans coming up to War Within. So yeah. Anyway, how about you though, Jake? What have you been up to?
Oh man, well I've wrestled with the way that the War Within beta and the pre-patch has felt. I think there's been a lot of talk about how similar to Dragonflight feels, and for me, I'm sort of one of those people where if I really enjoy a pre-patch, I will just sink all my time into it. I'll really get to grips with it, make it sort of feel like I understand what's going on. But that's always been a problem because when you go into the actual game, outside of like the first couple of weeks, everything changes. It all feels totally different. I remember Dragonflight pre-patch was a completely different scenario to how things were actually going into Dragonflight Season 1, and then all the changes that happened within that season. So everything can change, and I feel like, you know what, it's nice to actually have a bit of change of pace. So I've sort of been delving into, if excuse the pun, delving into SOD, a bit of Season of Discovery, to kind of itch that sort of classic feel that I always tend to get. So just been doing a little bit of leveling, keeping it very chill. Very busy time for me. So
cool.
Nice to keep things relaxed.
So I have to ask though, because you vocalized a couple times that you're not, the War Within just isn't really grabbing you. Are you starting to change your tune on that and kind of liking it? Or are you still kind of waffling on whether or not you want to actually try hard?
I think the biggest, I don't know about our guests here as well, but I think when I watched the trailer, I didn't fall in love with the concept. Like, there was nothing there. It felt like it was just a load of like a really good animation strung together, and it didn't feel like it had a cohesive story. Like, if you watch the WOD cinematic even now, like however many years later, I think it's sort of almost 10 years now, I feel so unbelievably inspired by the story, and I get goosebumps. Like, I genuinely feel that every single time I watch the WOD cinematic. But this one, it was nothing. Like, it was just I don't know, it just felt just nothing. I mean, I know that the Anduin one was good, but like some of the gameplay cinematic stuff that they've kind of put in, the extra cinematics, just don't really do it for me. Like, there's so much more to it. So I've never felt like truly inspired by it. I didn't really understand the story too much, and I think they've left so much of it sort of like under wraps that you've kind of like, well, what am I doing here? Where am I going? So that's kind of the sad part about it all.
Okay.
So with that, hasn't really drawn me in. So therefore, in the same vein, I haven't really wanted to play.
Fair enough. I saw Visnar bobbing his head when you were saying that. What do you think there, Visnar?
Yeah, I agree with Jake. I feel like the cinematics aren't the cinematics are good, but for me, a lot of it is story and lore, because I do a little more the casual side of the game where that stuff kind of appeals to me. Like, I won't play a Demon Hunter because it's a blood elf, that kind of stuff, right? So a good story or a cinematic that tells a story is a big draw for me, and it just hasn't been there. Like, I felt like the intro to the show this evening got me more pumped to play Warcraft than the cinematics for War Within have.
Wait, you guys? I mean, you guys don't skip the cinematics? I never watched them. The last time I watched the cinematics was like when Black Temple was relevant.
You know what though? I respect it. I respect it. You're either like a lore nerd, or you're an absolute sort of like, I don't watch anything purist.
I'm just a BG junkie, man. I don't care about anything else. I got to get into the PvP as quick as possible.
Nothing wrong with that, though.
We have YouTube, so we can just watch them.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah,
that's all. I just watch it on YouTube, so then I don't have to waste my game time.
Generally, my sound is off, so like when the movies pop up, I'm like, I can't even watch this. Doesn't even have sound.
Oh wow, you don't play? Okay. How do you hear the abilities going off?
So I have all of those, but like all the in-game sounds, I have those turned off.
Like talking and music and all that.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Well, hey, why don't we do the need, greet, and pass and see what I came up with this week, and then we'll roll into the show.
This likely won't be a clean fight, so keep your distance, eh?
Alrighty. Need, greet, and pass, as always. We'll, you guys at home can play along, but today it is my turn for a little bit of a need, greet, pass segment. So with this, I'll give a little scenario. I'm going to present 3 different options, and then we'll do a little round the table and see who picks need, who picks greed, and who picks, well, individually, but which one each of your picks are. So this one is going to be with Season of Discovery, right? So Season of Discovery, if I'm not mistaken, we're in like the last phase of SOD right now for the classic stuff. They're really having fun with, mismatching current abilities into the old world and stuff like that in classic. And I'm just kind of thinking, what might they try doing next after classic? So I was thinking, which ones would you guys rather play? Season of Discovery, The Burning Crusade, Season of Discovery, Mist of Pandaria, or Season of Discovery, Legion?
Ooh.
I'm gonna go to Jake first, actually.
Run me through that again. What was the first one? That
So
I got stuck on mop, and I suddenly sort of like all these things went into my head.
So Season Discovery Burning Crusade,
Okay.
Season Discovery Mop, and Season Discovery Legion.
Oh, you know what? That is interesting. Okay. All right. So, I think, I mean, there's the clear winner for me would have to be. I'm actually gonna need TBC.
Oh yeah,
And that's a weird one. And most people that know me well would say I'd go for Mop because Mop is one of my favorite expansions. But the reason why is I think Season Discovery works really well in older versions of the games where we have systems that don't necessarily work in the kind of retail sense anymore. And so kind of you add these sort of little details that we get from that modern game into like an older version of the game, which people enjoy, the kind of pacing and everything. You kind of get this sort of concoction which works really well. And obviously the reason why Season of Discovery has been so loved and enjoyed. But I think add TBC where that hold that like next level where we kind of progress from vanilla to this sort of like another beloved expansion that, you know, people really love to keep replaying. And you can kind of get even wackier with certain systems. And I think that would be really interesting, maybe more so than the others. I'd probably then agree on Mop Classic because I wouldn't mind seeing sort of, you know, the kind of reverse happen where Mop kind of gets more of the older style stuff, like stuff that we've kind of lost from the older school style of talents, instead of that sort of row system that they brought in Mop. And I'm going to pass on Legion only because I feel like I you know, Legion was all right, but it wasn't my favorite expansion. So I don't think adding older stuff to it would make me feel better. But those are my options.
all right, I like it. I'm gonna go. Let's do reverse alphabetical. Winters.
All right. So you guys are probably going to rip on me for this, but I've never played SOD before. So I don't really know much about it. But based off of the expansions, I'm going to go off based on my PvP experience in each expansion. So I would say Mop I would need on, Legion I would greed on, and then I would pass on Burning Crusade just because of the lack of content and class diversity.
All right. I like it. Short and sweet. You know what you like.
Right to the point.
I like it. Visnar.
I think I would need Legion just because with SOD, you know, they're always bringing in extra stuff that wasn't in the game. And I think you would have just a plethora of options with the legendary weapons for each spec. I think you could kind of get some fun interactions there, as well as the Mage Tower. It was always a selling point, get my werebear going.
I like it.
I would probably greed Mop just because of the expansion. I really enjoyed it. Did quite a bit of RBGs then, had a good group of people I was running with, so getting back to that would be fun. And then just out of necessity, I'd pass on TBC.
Fair enough. Was that a hard greed and pass to choose on, or was it like?
Yeah, I feel like it could go either way. Like I wouldn't be upset because going back to TBC, you know, getting DK in there, that's gonna open up some stuff as well. But Mop bringing in Monk, so either one would be, I think, could bring some fun to the game.
Cool. And Moosin.
Yeah, so I'll probably start with this. This almost sounds like a trap because I feel like most PvP players would say that Mop was the golden time for a lot of the PvP action.
Mm-hmm.
So this might seem a little bit might stir some anarchy, but I'm going to have to pass on Mop to begin with. I mean, it was a good time, but I know.
That's
but
crazy.
Especially with what's currently going on in the game, like we already have Remix. I'm looking at this from the perspective of what's going to bring people back. So I feel like people probably have already currently got their fill when it comes to Mop. Even though I guarantee if you offered it up on a silver platter that they would bring PvP into Remix, people would be all over it. Be like crack practically. But in the sense of trying to re-envision and bring stuff back to the game and like stir more people, I'm probably gonna have to agree with Jake in the sense of I would need on TBC coming back in SOD. Still back then, like it's further from everyone's mind, and you have a lot of class identity and free range to take some of these unique spells that have kind of been washed out and like reimagine them. So I think that would be really exciting. Then in addition, looking at obviously Greed, I turned towards Legion. Legion itself was a great X-Pack. It brought a lot of people back, especially from the WAD. So I definitely think it would be good, but I mean, most of those people, I feel like they're going to enjoy it no matter what. But you bring back Son, I feel like it'd be the next best step.
All right, I like it. It's so this is hard for me. So I love Legion. I really enjoyed that expansion, and I want that to be my need. But I also realize that Legion's pretty close to current, and I'm not sure how much more weird and wacky stuff they could add to it, right? So I'm gonna have to pass on it, only for that reason. I'd love to see it, but I don't think it would be a really good SOD version. And then, so with that, then it's a toss up between MOP and TBC. I'm gonna have to need on TBC. It's pretty dear in my heart, and I think I think that you could probably do some pretty wacky stuff with that. And plus, also, I mean, let's be honest, it also brings in that whole now Alliance can play Shaman and Horde have Paladin, so that's always kind of fun and wacky on its own. So do that, and then of course, then I'll have to agree on MOP. I think, and the reason why I put MOP there and not Wrath, and it kind of skipped over a couple, was, correct me if I'm wrong, but MOP was when they did the ability pruning, right? So I was thinking that then it would have a little bit less than, or was that Cataclysm I'm thinking of?
No, I think WAD and MOP did a lot more pruning. In Kata, there seems to be a bit more bloat.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's what I was thinking. Like, MOP would be good. Had some ability pruning. Maybe even give back some of the abilities they pruned out the first time as an SOD. But as always, those are our choices. Love to hear what people are thinking at home. I see some ideas in chat, which are awesome. And again, if you're sitting at home, hop on over to Discord, drop it into our Twitter, heck, even email us, any of those places. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, we're going to talk about some upcoming PvP events.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
All right, so pretty quiet right now. Not a lot of stuff going on. I know Blizzard's on kind of a break until War Within Season 1 fires up, and then I'm assuming we'll hear about their PvP events. And hopefully maybe we'll see some orgs like Liquid and that start up. In the meantime, it's the only one I actually know, and yes, it's kind of a plug for the guild that I joined, but the Notorious Guild is running a community event, so they're going to be running a solo shuffle tournament on the 26th of August, and they have I think it's a 75,000 gold for DPS and 50,000 gold for healers. So I'm going to be dropping the link for their guild event, the Discord link to their event into the show notes. And yeah, actually, and just for that, I think I will drop it into, as soon as I can get this to work. There it is. I drop it in Twitch chat too. So if you head over to the Twitch, then you'll see that as well right about this time mark. Anyway, that's about it that we know for PvP events. Unless anybody else knows anything, by all means, let us know and we'll happily give it a shout out. But let's get this go. Oh, Bloodbound. Oh yeah, Bloodbound Winter. Somebody shouting you out there, Winters.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Subject analysis. Let's do this.
I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks.
All right. Subject analysis. We're here. You guys. So if anybody hasn't figured it out yet, we're going to be talking tanks. Because, yeah, I know. Shocker. It's we got 3 major tank players. So, and this is actually really appropriate since we just talked to Brian Holinka last episode, and he was talking about his class balances, and we asked him about the Holy Trinity and how tanks fit into that. So, yeah, first and foremost, tanks. I think Winters. going to throw it to you first again. What's it like to try and play competitively as a tank in PvP?
Well, for me, I only play Raid of Battleground, so it's definitely a different atmosphere compared to Arena. I know that there are tanks that push in Arena, and it's just not something I can speak on. But from an RBG perspective, you really don't need to do damage to win games. RBGs are an objective-based gameplay, meaning that as long as you can play the objective well on your class, which you can actually play objectives better as a tank spec, then you can win the game. So, like, for example, I have a lot of experience playing 3 different tank specs. I play Blood DK, Guardian, and Vengeance DH. And just to give you an example, like Blood DK is very good at spinning nodes. They're very good at slowing players. They're very good at staying alive, obviously, because they're a tank. And they're very good at, like, controlling positioning. So, like, how we would attack a base essentially as a Blood DK with a Blood DK on the team is our team would essentially zerg a node and use that DK to cut the other team off from rotating. So we basically play to out rotate other teams with a Blood DK. But that's just one example of how Blood DK is used in that scenario. Every different tank has a different niche, and every different tank has its own role in RBGs, and every single tank is viable in RBGs if you know how to play it right.
It's interesting because I've always heard differently. It's always like, oh, there's only 2 tanks that can play in RBGs, and I think right now it's DH and Druid. I haven't heard of prop paladins or prop warriors or even brewmaster monks succeed, but they can all succeed.
Yes. So let's talk about the tanks that aren't around in RBGs often that you don't see. So Brewmaster Monk, there's maybe like 2 or 3 good Brewmaster Monks in the bracket. I personally don't play Brewmaster, but one of the best Brewmasters I know, his name's Pebs. He queues with this guy Jakers, and he is absolutely insane. He can do damage like a Windwalker Monk as a Brewmaster, and Brewmasters are very good at sitting nodes, believe it or not. But in my opinion, Brewmaster is one of the highest skill capped classes in terms of tank play. So in order to be very good at a Brewmaster, you have to be very, very good at the game. A Brewmaster is definitely a difficult tank spec to play. I would say it's the hardest out of all the tank specs, in my opinion. But again, every tank spec has its niche. Another thing Brewmaster is pretty good at is that they can help slow EFCs down. They're also good flag carriers if you can get them across the map. So, like, for example, like on a flag map, they have this ability called Clash, and they can just charge the FC and constantly root them so they can't get away from you. If they're FCing, they have Transcendence, so they can pour it up and down the roof. There's a lot of things that they can do. But yeah, a lot of people wouldn't really know that Brewmasters are good base hitters, and they're also very good at stealing bases, believe it or not. If you know how to play Brewmaster well, again, I don't know how to play Brewmaster well. I know people that do. I've seen a Brewmaster global a base hitter and steal the base. I've seen a Brewmaster CC cap on a base hitter and steal the base. Like, there's a lot of things you can do with it. Let's put it that way. Prop Pally, the other one. Prop Pally is probably the only tank spec that's not very good in RBGs at the moment. Now, I don't know what the current changes look like because I haven't looked at the patch notes for Prop Pally. But what Prop Pally used to be good for back in the day when it was relevant is people used to use Prop Pally as a 4th healer. So they had very good off heals, and Prop Pally would be there as like an assistant healer, like a support healer. And I know their healing got nerfed to the ground pretty hard. And you haven't really seen any Prop Pallies in RBGs. I personally don't know anyone that plays Prop Pally in RBGs right now. So I would say Prop Pally is probably the only spec that is absolutely dog water in RBGs right now. But again, I haven't looked at the patch notes, so I really don't know. It could be better now. That's a possibility. And then the last spec that we could talk about that we didn't mention is Prop Warrior. I know one of the other tanks in here plays Warrior, and he's a Prop fan. But Prop Warrior in RBGs, if you're going to play it, it would be used as a mitigation class. So, like, for example, on a flag map, I would run a Prop Warrior with my actual flag carrier because they can mitigate and eat all the damage that your actual tank is taking. So they're very good defensive players. I wouldn't use a Prop Warrior to be an actual flag carrier. I would use them to mitigate damage for your team so that they're just soaking up damage and eating everybody's DPS, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's pretty much my take on those lower scene tank specs.
And I'd also probably add on to that. Well, I mean, Winters is bringing up really big points, but also to tie back to what you were saying originally is I think we started seeing this dynamic between the Guardian and the Demon Hunter being the priority, stemming mostly from when we had Shadowlands. Especially Guardian became the go-to just because we had Legacy of the Sleeper.
Yep.
So you started having all these players picking up Guardian that could start carrying flag maps and just getting the flag across the map without really being hindered. So it started shifting that dynamic for the flag carrying maps in the sense of, well, all the other classes are kind of, they just can't do it as well. So you start getting more people catering towards that, and you just start seeing the other classes fall off. Now, like Winters was saying, is all of these, excluding, I'd have to agree with him on the prop out, and I really haven't seen too many prop paladins. But like they all have niches, but since the majority of the player base is associating or familiar with the DH most as well as Guardian, well, Guardian most and DH, like they're not familiar with how these other classes play or how to change the dynamic of the comp to accommodate those tanks.
Cool.
I will emphasize, though, on your point with Guardian, the reason why Guardian has been so good in RBGs and is still good, mainly is because their defensive cooldowns are so good. Like, they have 2 charges of wall bark that reduces damage by almost 50%, and they can stealth. I mean, that's the big kicker right there. You know, they can't get taken out. They can just go grab the flag without any pressure. Whereas, like, if you had a Blood DK or a DH tank running the flag, you can just full send on them the second the game opens. You know what I mean? So, like, that stealth gives them a huge advantage against other tanks, especially when it comes to flag carrying.
Oh yeah, the utility that they bring is profound. I'm actually curious though with what sort of changes we'll see with the loss of Boomy form for the opposite specs. I mean, this past seasons I really haven't used it too much, but I feel like even losing Boomkin form and Guardian is going to be huge.
I think there's a real need, I think, for the meta to be shaken up in RPGs, and that's, I think, the major problem, right, that's been sort of endemic with the way that the community has sort of disintegrated, as it were. Because I've played RPGs competitively since WoD, and every single expansion since then, and although that is the time that I initially started, has felt like that community has just gone so much just smaller and smaller and smaller. You know, we were running sort of RPGs all day, every day, with vast amounts of different people coming in here and there. And by the time we got to the end of BFA, I mean, it was just, you know, it was the same people the entire time. You'd see the same people all over. And there was a little injection at the beginning of Shadowlands, but then again, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And I think what kind of really doesn't help with that is the fact that we have only like really 2 meta tanks that you can take. Like, majority of people will want a Guardian or a Demon Hunter just to make things easy, right? Like, I mean, why would you want to already make it difficult on yourself when you're sort of taking whoever kind of your friends in for RPGs? You want something that's nice and easy for you to do. So I do empathize that. And what do you guys think about, what do you think would be needed for that shake-up to happen?
For what shake-up? For other tanks to be more viable on flag maps?
Yeah, other tanks more viable.
All right, for starters, I think that the flag map debuff, when you get 6 stacks of the flag, it forces all FCs to be slow. That slow doesn't really affect DH tanks at all, which is why DH tanks are good. I think that slow should be removed from the game so that all tanks could kite and use mobility. I mean, you're going to die regardless with high stacks, but it gives DH tank an unfavorable advantage with leap. And then besides that, I think that the other tank specs, not Blood DK, but I think Blood DK is in a good spot. I would put up an argument that it's probably pretty viable to be in the meta as a main tank. Just to give you an example of that, Glogan is FCs as Blood DK, and he's pushed to 2400 running the flag as a Blood. So it's very viable. You just need to know how to do it correctly, and your team needs to know how to play around it. But like in terms of the other tank specs being better at FCing, they just need better defensives. They just need to be able to live longer and be able to eat damage for longer periods of time. But yeah, the mobility doesn't help. It definitely puts DH at an unfavorable advantage at high stacks.
Winners, do you think that if they did a kind of like in a regular BGQ, you queue in as a tank, then you're a tank. If you queue in as a healer, you're a healer. You think in RBGs, if they did that would change up the meta as well? Because I know if you queue in as a bear, a lot of times if it's not a flag map, you're going to go booming, or if DH is going to go havoc over vengeance a lot of times, just based on having that extra DPS out there.
Yeah, I think it would change the meta a little bit. I mean, personally, for my comp, what I run, it wouldn't, because I run tanks on every map anyway, regardless. Like, I just stay tank when I'm running. But like other teams, for instance, a lot of teams like to run 7 DPS on non-flag maps, so that would affect the normal meta in terms of every team would have a tank on their team at all times, because they would need a tank in case they get a flag map.
Yeah, I feel like anytime I tried to queue LFG, it was, do you have a druid and do you know how to boomkin? That was the 2 questions that I would get asked if I queued up. So I didn't know if locking in, hey, in this RPG you've got to lock in as a tank or you don't, and then you're locked in once you get into the zone.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like that with Blitz right now, if I'm wrong.
It is with Blitz. Yeah, you're locked.
But yeah, somebody in the comments dropped the comment, which I kind of agree with. If he said Brutal Assault, if Warrior had an extra leap with their leaps, it would make them a little bit more viable. I do agree with that. But at the same time, like the way Warrior set up, the way Prot Warrior is that most of their damage mitigation comes from mitigating their teammates' damage, not themselves. You know what I mean? So that's the problem with Prot Warrior, in my opinion, is that they're tanky, but they're tanky in eating other people's damage. So they don't really have a lot of self-sustained abilities. They have to rely on healers more.
Yeah, you're pretty much wasting intervene if you've got the flag as a warrior.
So speaking, since you're like the warrior expert though, Visnar.
But no, I've played some warrior. I'm definitely not an expert.
Well, all right, fair. However you feel about it, but I think in the venue of who's all here, I think you would probably have more experience in warrior. But I remember we were talking before the show, and you were mentioning how you only feel that you can PvP as an arms warrior because of the stigma that you're feeling as being a prot warrior. But now listening to Winters, it sounds like there's opportunities there. It's just a matter of gameplay, and obviously people being aware of that. So
yeah, hearing him talk about how he would play prot warrior as not the flag carrier, but as just a defensive help to soak. That's actually pretty eye opening. It's not something that I've thought about. It's definitely something I'm gonna look into, because I do enjoy, prot warrior running around leaping, bashing people with my shield. But when it comes to if you switch it to arenas or solo queue or solo shuffle, if I queue in as a prot warrior, I'm just going to die, right? Because in solo shuffle, you're not going to have teammates to help you. There's not going to be any communication there. In a regular threes match, they're just going to either CC me and get a kill once my defensives or my utility is gone. So I feel like the pressure is not there to warrant going prot warrior in those situations. But like I said, Winter's saying that you just mix it up and play it a different way is definitely something to look at.
Interesting. So it's funny because every once in a while during whatever was the shuffle weekly for the Dragonflight, when I was playing Vengeance DH, I just queue up its Vengeance as a tank, and I'd run around, and sometimes we were successful. Like all I did is I interrupted and sat on the healer and just completely disrupted the healer on the enemy side. And I'm thinking that there is some opportunities, especially that's the thing that Soul Shuffle really brings, is it allows you to play really whatever you want, and you can try to get as high as you want. So kind of wondering if that's if that's going to be more viable here. Especially, it seems like with the War Within, I think we're going to have a bit more of a more PvP enabled expansion. I'm getting that feeling, but I know it doesn't feel like it right now, especially we're going with the trailers. But I think that's going to be an option. So,
as somebody who spent minimal time on beta, just kind of looking at the hero talents, I feel like it could give, it could definitely bring some better situations to those PvP settings as a tank. Anytime you can, increase damage output or increase bleeds or anything like that, and that seems like that's what a lot of the hero talents are based on, is augmenting what you already have. So to strengthen a utility toolkit with more damage is definitely going to open more doors.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, so obviously and I know I'm sure there's a bunch of people out here right now that are listening and going, why the heck are we talking about PvP and tanks? Tanks don't belong in PvP. No, seriously though, like that's been the thought of the community for ages. Yeah. Again,
It's the collective PTSD, I think, from that prop power situation.
Yeah.
I know that's for me for sure. I've definitely sort of like, I'm like Goku with the spirit bomb in the sky, except the spirit bomb kind of like is everyone's trauma, and I sort of absorbed it, and I never want to face that ever again. I definitely every time, like, oh my god, shuffles. I don't know if you guys remember the shuffles when they first started, where you would get prop pallet queues, were the most horrible experience I think I've ever had beyond the prop pallet shenanigans in Shadowlands. So I think there is a stigma for sure, and I think the problem that we've got is that as WoW has evolved and actually PvE has evolved, so too have tanks, right? Like tanks have gone from sort of, you know, being these sort of kind of much like, as you say, damage mitigators that have just sort of like stood there. They have to get healed. They don't really have much self-healing. They just have a lot of ways to kind of keep themselves up. I think Blood DKs being the first sort of ones, you know, in Wrath and in Kata that could actually like heal. Like, I mean, Blood DKs in general in Kata were just these unstoppable healing machines where you kind of started to move towards this meta of, okay, well, they've got to heal now. These guys need to heal. And I think if you apply that to general arena, regular old, you know, DPS who don't heal nearly as much and can't take a load of damage whilst also doing a load of damage, because tanks do hit quite hard sometimes. I think that's always been the case. But I think for RPGs in general, there is such a special niche in which actually being a tank player is vital. In fact, it's probably one of the most important roles in there, because if you've got a bad tank, if you've got someone that doesn't know how to kite, doesn't know which way to go, doesn't trust the team, doesn't know what to do in team fights, doesn't know how to hang back, doesn't know when to recognize when to go and to start kiting, in each of those situations, you can lose games that you might be winning. You know, you might be winning all the team fights, but if your tank sort of like runs into them and gets killed every time, and they reset flag and they cap, you know, what are you going to do? So I think it's a really important role, and I think that's such a thing that's underestimated in the community. So that's why I love talking about it on the podcast as well. So we get access to more people to kind of change their minds on things that, you know, people have kind of sort of tried to make their minds up on.
Yeah. So I actually want to circle back. Is yes, I think the prop paladin healer meta that we had there is definitely forefront in a lot of people's mind. But I feel like the issue, I guess, the concern that the community had about tanks doing things goes even farther back to like TBC, even with what warriors were doing in PvP, and that resulted in a bunch of the nerfs and how tanks have then been modified in how they play in PvP. And I think they take damage and they just need a bunch of heals. I think it's also that how can I put this? With damage mitigation and all the interrupts that they have and the disruption that they cause in what people are used to in the flow of PvP. So because I mean, let's be honest, especially in arena, it's all about goes and counter goes, right? And, you know, trading your defensives and looking for those opportunities and be able to finally get the win. And I feel like tanks disrupt that flow so much that people who are looking for that type of gameplay, they just don't know what to do, and they feel so frustrated by it that then they feel
they do, yeah, they're for sure
trapped. Yeah,
they don't understand. A lot of people, especially in RPGs, don't know how to counter tank teams. And you know what? Another thing to emphasize too is that I wouldn't even look at a tank as a tank spec. I look at tank as a support spec. It's a support role. How can you support your team and help your team win the game? You know, like for example, Guardian Druid has a lot of things that they can do outside of just spinning a flag or running a flag. They can cyclone, they can stun people with overrun, they can kick people, they can typhoon. I as a Guardian on at a temple game, for instance, I could literally shut down 2 healers for almost 5 minutes just by kicking, typhooning, and cycloning and stunning them just to help my DPS land kills. So like there's things that you can do outside of just being a tank, you know, like that's why I look at it as a tank as a support role, and every different support role has a different niche that they're good at in the game.
You're not wrong. But I think, like I said, that's where the frustration was. And I think that frustration, especially in the arena side, and then of course, then there's the elitists. It's like, well, it's just a tank. They shouldn't be able to do well. You know, DPS and healing, that's where it's at. So, and yes, I'm using a meme voice because I think it's a stupid meme. But I agree. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't agree with those. I agree that I think tanks have a place in PvP. I think they should be able to at least maybe. All right, here, around the table. Moosin first. Take a little vote. Do you think a tank spec should be able to reach Gladiator in 3s?
I mean, that's I feel like it's a little bit loaded. I mean, realistically, yes. I feel like in a perfect world, it should be able to. I mean, the utility that it brings, it just more so comes down to like what the matchup is becoming or what the match you're going into.
Well, there's that for sure. But right now, how many tanks do you know that can even make 2400? Because
I was going to emphasize on that. Yes.
Yeah.
But that's because of all the nerfs and all the other tuning and everything against them, right? So if we wipe that out, I just gut feeling though. Do you think that a tank spec should, if all things were equal and it was a perfect world, would you like to see tank specs be able to be quote unquote viable in arena?
I would, because generally speaking, I mean, as Winters was saying, it's very much a support class. There's so much utility that they can bring past how people see it. That kind of goes back to what I was saying with, Guardian and DH. It's just what people are familiar with. So if you are able to stop and go deeper into the class, for example, currently in, not that Battleground Blitz is the same, but as I've been playing around with it to get more accustomed to it, like I'm playing Guardian completely different as I was, and I'm focusing on the utility that it brings. So I feel like if you can get the appropriate comp together with some of the tank specs, the utility that they're going to bring should be able to get you to those higher brackets. So, I mean, I guess to flesh that out. So, like, for example, in Battleground Blitz at the moment, focusing solely on the objective aspect, like when I'm playing Guardian or even Blood DK, I can just go take one of the bases, for example, out of play completely. Just straight, like, remove it from the game, and then you have your team sit the other two bases. Like, it's fun. No one can cap the base. You're just using your own utility to play the class differently.
Now, I'm going to be honest. If I was a DPS on the other side of that, I would be pissed as hell. Like, that would be so frustrating.
You'd be miserable, right? Which it is. I think there has been a real breakthrough here. I think support is a really good way of looking at tanks, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of really, if you're talking about arena future for tanks, I think support is a good idea. Like, look at augmentation, for example, designed to be a support. Quite miserable to queue into, because I think the idea that something is so tanky, if you excuse my kind of phrasing there, something so tanky can kind of just live and just not die and just kind of do its thing, is something that people struggle with, because then you can kind of make comps where, okay, if the other two can't really die because they're either broken or a little bit OP or overtuned, then you've got this comp that can't die, so they just kind of run you into the ground, into dampening, which no one really enjoys. But I think there should be a way, and I really hope that Blizzard kind of maybe think about this for tanks, for PvP, is a way to kind of bring them in with that support, with that, as we talked about, that damage mitigation is a way of doing it. I mean, I had this concept a really long time ago that a new healer could be brought in before preservation was a thing, that kind of focused on damage mitigation, like kind of did damage, took like kind of the essence from someone, and then kind of passed it on to the kind of people that they were sort of, quote unquote, healing as a sort of form of damage mitigation. I think that'd be quite an interesting way of looking at it and kind of coming at it from a class design point of view. But it is a shame to kind of feel like your sort of opinion is always going to be skewed by what you've experienced in the past.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Well, and we just talked about that, how, right now a lot of people, myself included, thought it was Druids and DHs are like the main FCs because of SL, and yet you're, I know Glogan played, but I thought his main job as Blood DK was just to be interruption, like, yeah, and that meme of where they take one of the healers and pull them to like tie bets.
I mean, he does that too, but like in terms of like Blood DK FCs, he's probably the top Blood DK FC in the game in terms of FCs. I play Blood at a top level as well, but I don't FC as Blood, so there's a difference between us there.
Okay, so you just like to take healers to tie bet then?
Well, no, I mean, playing Blood isn't just about taking healers. Like no. we do other things besides that. Like I can give you like a solid example here. So, if we get like a map like Deepwind Gorge, what we would do is I run 3 tanks. I run 2 Bloods. So what we would do is we send 2 Bloods into middle at market, and we just spin the node forever. And basically, like Moosin mentioned earlier, we take the node out of the game, and we force everyone to play for 4 nodes. That's it. And occasionally, we're able to steal that middle node by gripping whoever's in middle out of middle and knocking them out. So, like in that scenario, we're not stealing healers; we're spinning a node. Okay. Another example of how we play Blood without stealing healers all the time is we use the conveyor belt. So, like an example I can give you here is like on a map like Arathi Basin, we might play for Blacksmith, right? And with our 2 DKs, we would position one in the water and one up at the top.
Yeah,
and we would grip all their players out of Blacksmith and into the river, and then cap the node. So like there's different methods to the madness that we use to win the game. And believe it or not, people are thinking like, oh, you guys are using cheese strats, whatever, but it takes a lot of coordination to land these strats, because if your team isn't communicating with you, then it's not going to be effective. And it's not just me and the other DK who are doing this. Our healers are helping us knock with chi knocks, with our Mistweavers and Ox kicks, and like our whole comp that we run is built around the utility of our tanks. So like it's hard to explain that. But I want to go back to your question too, real quick too, about the Glad in 3s. I don't play arenas, but I do want to comment. Someone mentioned in your chat that they think every class should be viable in arenas, and I agree with that. In my opinion, I don't play arenas. I don't really care to push arenas, but I think that it is possible to push Glad as a tank, and I think it's a higher skill cap to do it. I think someone who's pushed Glad as a tank is probably better than the player who pushed as a DPS, because it's a lot easier to push as DPS than it is as a tank. It's definitely a lot harder to push in arenas because it's just a different type of game mode. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
No, I appreciate it. I was going to come back to you on that, but we're off on this nice little tangent. So
yeah.
Well, thank you. It would be the podcast without it, to be honest. We always go on a tangent.
Isn't it like the key to podcasting is tangents?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I feel like the funniest moments are always just this random bit that's definitely not supposed to be there.
No, exactly.
So,
I mean, I was trying to meme about taking healers to Tibet, and Winters completely proved me that that's not the only thing that can be done. So today I learned. Visnar, though, I haven't asked you. What's your thoughts on viability of tank?
I mean, as far as just the class goes, yeah, I would definitely like to see it. I agree with Winters, though. I think that that doing it as a tank takes so much more. I feel like most of my time is spent nowadays in Mythic Plus or raiding, so and I'm tanking in there, right? So like if I go to PvP now, I'm changing specs, depending on gear, I'm changing stats, and it's just a bit of a headache. Where if I could go straight out of a Mythic Plus or raid into an arena or an RBGQ as a Prot Warrior, that would streamline so many things. But yeah, seeing somebody push that, I know that there's been outliers over the past expansion or so. With I think there's a Brewmaster that was pushing pretty high there. I think they may have been broken at the time, but I don't think I because my favorite spec is a protection warrior. I don't feel like that should negate me from pushing certain content, and it kind of feels that way now outside of playing with my buddies.
So the reason why you're Mythic Plusing and raiding right now is just so you can play the spec the way you want to play it.
Yeah.
Not so if it was up to like both being equal, you'd be PvPing the wazoo as a Prot Warrior. But
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So
I would still Mythic Plus because I've got a buddies that we've been playing together since Wrath, and we'll hop on a couple nights a week and push some keys. But Yeah, if I could queue up arenas or RBGs as just a Pro Warrior and just get in there and smash, I would do that. That would be nightly for me for sure.
So
It's an interesting.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Gareth, you.
No.
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry, that's my Britishness coming through. It's like I have to be super polite, but it's so interesting to kind of talk about sort of every spec being viable, because realistically, right, balancing the game that way is so incredibly tough. However, I think in the last kind of couple of expansions, we have got pretty close. There are a lot of specs that are viable. Everything seems to work, at least from Arena. Everything seems to work. The problem you've got is that some specs are just incredibly overbearing and just make it really miserable to play. So an example for me is I've played a lot of Shadow Priest in this expansion. It can be pretty miserable into melee that have got incredible amounts of mobility, and you just can't really escape, and they kind of have micro CC coming out of every orifice, and it's just kind of nutty. So that's kind of miserable to play. Although I love playing the spec, kind of miserable to play. So you're sort of trying to figure out what actually makes more sense to you, and actually playing Mythic Plus with a spec you enjoy where you don't have to worry about all that is actually a really interesting way of kind of going, I like the spec, I play the game for the spec. I don't play the game because all I want to do is queue up Arena or queue up RBGs until my brain goes numb. You play it because you actually just enjoy playing that spec, and I think that's maybe something that a lot of us actually could learn from personally, because it feels like a lot of us, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I queue up to play Arena, I queue up to play with a friend of mine, and that's what we do. You know, go for that Glad every season. Like, that's what you've got to try and do, and that's fun. So I'll play kind of what I enjoy the most, and I've always been an LE main, but found myself the last couple of expansions not wanting to play it just because it's not fun. Even when it's broken, it's not fun. So I kind of just try and play stuff, and you just end up just kind of ham-fisting yourself in there. So it's nice. I think it's a refreshing way of looking at what do you play the game for? Do you play the game for Arena, or do you play it for the spec?
Well, I think for me anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off, but for me, it comes down to time commitment, right? Because usually I'm on around 8:30 Central, and I'll play till midnight or so. So that time frame's fairly limited to be, gearing 5, 6, 7, characters for trying to find a comp that's going to push well against what's currently in season, or gearing up multiple tanks because maybe Druid's in, or maybe DH is in, or maybe DK's in. So for me, if I'm enjoying Pro Warrior in Mythic Plus and Raid, then that's what I'm going to do, because that's what I enjoy. So when it's time to PvP, it just kind of it makes it a tough situation to have to play something that you'd rather not play.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally get that. I think that's the thing. It's sort of an interesting way of looking at what are you playing tank because it's the spec. Well, it seems like to me, you guys, that's what you enjoy, right? You're playing it because that's what you enjoy. You're playing Blood DK because you like Blood DK. You're playing Prot Warrior because you like Prot Warrior. And I think that's something that's very different to us DPS players and the DPS players that I've played with. You kind of end up just sort of filtering to the thing that's really good. Especially I know a lot of people that would play DH or Boomkin for RBGs because either one of those are going to be useful, and it means that you're always guaranteed to have a slot whenever anyone's free. But if you play anything else that's kind of a bit dog water, then you're just not gonna get chosen. And as you say, we're all limited, right? We're all adults. We have most of us work. Like a lot of your time is coming home after work. I've got 4 hours to spend. I can't realistically grind RBGs, wait in an RBG queue for an hour doing nothing. It's the same thing as I said with Solo Shuffle. Is like I struggled early on when it was like 40-minute queues. So I'm like, I actually have to go now. I've been just sat in queue. It's not popped. What am I doing? I'm just sitting there watching Netflix whilst I'm waiting for this queue to pop. So it's about how you spend your quality time.
I will say though that in terms of like playing what you want to play, at least in RPGs, the best way to like play a spec that's off meta is to just form your own group up. I mean, that's the reason why I became a leader in RPGs, is because when I originally started playing, I was playing a spec that nobody would take me on. So I kind of got forced into leading because I wanted to play what I wanted to play. and people wouldn't let me play it, you know. So I mean, there's always a way around it. I mean, you can definitely, like I said, everything's viable. You just have to build a comp around what you're playing to make sure that the utility that your team brings to the table reflects well off of the class you're playing.
I think the problem there though is that there's people that they want to tank but they don't want to lead, right? You know, they don't want to be the leader of a raid. They don't want to be a leader of anything. They just want to play the game and not have to do that. Either because leading means voice, it means, you know, which opens you up to possible ridicule, and that feels bad. Or like case in point, like myself, I'm in a job where I'm leading all day in my job, in my work, my life. When I play a video game, I don't want to have to also lead. So I prefer.
That's a valid point.
Yeah, it's so I know what you mean though. Like, but then to try to form your own group and then say, oh, but that other person over there, you know, you just joined me, but I want you to be the lead, like that. I tried that once. It doesn't go well.
It's a thing though that you used to do, like with getting, you know, like you'd have a leader who would set out the strats. You don't even have to do that in voice. You just kind of set out strats in like raid chat, and people listening can follow like a TC, like a target caller. And that was a thing. Like people used to just do one or the other. Nowadays, I don't think that necessarily is a thing anymore. I think people kind of have learnt to just watch what people are going and look for the best thing, and people then to talk. Like that's what my experience has been. Sort of, you know, there seems to be a sort of more intuitive way of doing it, especially at the higher ratings. But you know, nowadays, like any of the kind of pug groups that you go into RPGs, doesn't seem like that is a sort of practice anymore. Like I remember so vividly from WoD, like we'd get into TeamSpeak, yeah, which again feels like archaic. We get into TeamSpeak, and everybody like, okay, yeah, right. So who we got? So Warrior, DK, can any of you guys TC? Like, and it's just that you're just asking people to do it so that you can focus on two different things and just have those two people talking. It's just seems a lot more like it feels like it's just a lot more chaotic nowadays. And as you say, it's a bit overbearing to kind of be like, okay, well I'll just lead now. I don't know any strats, but I'll get it. But I think what Winter's saying is actually really, really interesting. Is to actually form the strats around what you want to play. You know?
Yeah. No, and that's actually a really good point. Is like myself, I wouldn't be able to do that. I don't think I'm smart enough. Like my first thing is just, okay, I know everybody's playing this set of specs in, you know, this comp, so I just try to do the same thing. You know, make sure I have my druid, make sure I have a rogue, make sure I have a couple dot classes, you know, a warrior or a ret. You know, got to make sure I have my Mistweaver because, you know, revival. You know, grab another healer, maybe disc or holy, and you know, maybe some other DPS fillers. But yeah. So I think Jake, I didn't really ask your opinion though. Viability. Do you want to see tanks being viable in all forms of PvP?
It's a really difficult question for me, I think, because as I said, like I don't think that specs that are unkillable should be put into arena because as I talked about before, like there's a lot of comps that you can create where nothing dies, and I think it makes things miserable being forced to kind of go into dampening. I actually played a game this season where we played against a blood decay, and we actually killed the third DPS. The DPS dies, but because the blood decay doesn't die, we get into dampening. My healer's at now, and then we start dying because his sustain is strong, and I feel like that isn't really rewarding the fact that we've kind of done this really cool setup go, because we're playing this very meme comp. We got this really cool setup go, get rid of that third DPS, and we're kind of rewarded by someone just kind of like slowly grinding us down. Now, if that were to change, like if Blizzard sort of adapted the way that tanks work in PvP, which I would love for them to do, is it realistic? I don't know. But if they changed it sort of like in the way that they work in PvP versus PvE, I think then yes, I would absolutely I'd be keen for it. I just think it's such a difficult situation. I mean, I'm never going to say don't play. Like I think that's a really miserable way of looking at it. I just personally don't enjoy it, so it's not something that I'm pro. But I'm not like against it. I'm not against it. Like, you know, I've queued into Bruisin, so Bruisin is a EU Brewmaster, sorry, who played when they were kind of really strong, was playing Brewmaster Warrior, and that was disgusting.
They played the AWC, didn't they?
They did, yes, they did. They played that comp in AWC, and it's disgusting. Like, it wasn't great. It was nice to see like something so interesting in the AWC, and I really respect them for it, massively so. But it was not fun to queue into at all on the ladder. So, but yeah, I think yeah, that's kind of my opinion. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it. I just don't personally enjoy it.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to be a little different, and I want to say I think tanks should be able to get 2K. I'm not so sure if they should be able to get to Gladiator or higher.
Oh, that's crazy.
Feel
the love.
Yeah, we just brought you guys on here to just insult you.
Yeah, well,
maybe egos are like not too high.
Well, and
it's all right. I don't care about arenas. It's all right.
I think we've chosen the right people, so everyone's well, we don't care about arena.
Yeah. We don't care about your opinion, Jared. Thank you so much. Carry on.
Anyway, that's been the podcast. So.
No, I'm going to be serious though. Like, I think any spec should be able to be viable. I think any spec should be able to find a way to at least get to 2K. I think that's reasonable. I feel like that's a good higher than middle spot.
You don't think 2.1, Gareth, so just for the to get the
sure,
enchant?
Sure, 2.1. Okay,
so I raised it for you.
There you go. You convinced me to it. But I mean, can somebody always get somewhere that wasn't initially designed? Sure, I think there's always that opportunity. Without win trading, I think it should happen, but I don't think that should be the norm. And I only say that because it's so miserable to play against tanks, and I feel like I feel bad for the people who are like how miserable it must be trying to play a spec that community, like just like the hate from the community they must get, but also fighting against the design of the system to go against this. Like that's some pretty hard fight against it that I feel like that's all. So that's where I come from. But I do think that they should at least have that viability, like at least by all means get to 2.1. But I feel like most tanks feel like they're not even welcome, and that even if they put their foot in, they're so handicapped that they might as well not even try for any sort of PvP other than the one or two specs that are allowed by RBGs. So I do like BGB because you can queue up as whatever, and it's not like anybody can stop you. Right? It's we don't want you in your team. We don't want you in the team. Like, thank you everybody's going to still play because they don't want to lose rating. They don't want to not play the game.
They don't want the 1 day ban from queuing.
Right?
For the relevance of the topic, since we're talking about tanks and viability, I did post a bunch of clips in the chat, and there's one specific clip I'd like the viewers to check out. It's called Tank Gangbang. In that clip, we ran nothing but tanks, 7 tanks and 3 healers, and we won a flag map. My point being is that you don't need DPS to win games.
Mm-hmm. Bobby DK did the same thing. Yeah.
I was about to say.
This goes back to focusing on the objectives, right? And I mean, Blizzard has done really good at, I feel like, balancing going into this expansion, and that in part is due to I feel like how they've treated the gear. Obviously, there's going to be some outliers of the classes, but if you have a certain level of understanding of the class, like, you can go far, especially when you focus on the objectives. Like, the possibilities are profound. For example, like 7 tanks. We used to joke back in Shadowlands about, all the boomies running Convoke, but I mean, if you put your mind to it, like, you can do a lot of things. And I feel like that's why a lot of people also are like either hesitant getting into tanks or even going against tanks, because the skill set is so unique that it's also not the same for everyone that plays it. So in the sense of, like, when you're carrying a flag for the first time, let's say, like, you just now got into PvP, like, there are so many little nuances that you're not aware of. Like, the barrier to entry is a challenge. And that's why I feel like you also see a lot of Guardians in particular, because you have that utility to try and buy you some time to figure it out. And that's why I'd say, like, yeah, that's a different tangent.
But there's guides
the dreaded
too.
curse.
No, but there's guides. Like you can look for. There's a bunch of guides on how to be a bear tank in PvP. There's not a lot of guides on how to be a brewmaster.
True. But I mean, even then, I do guides. I make out guides for Guardian, and like I sit there because I'm more of a casual PvPer. I do make my own groups because it's fun just to relax, drink some whiskey, and like have a good time. But like, that's one of the issues when it comes to tank. Like we talked about, it's a very important role. Like it can either make or break a group. Mm-hmm. But trying to find that tactful difference, that tactful point in communicating and helping people get better, that's always been something that's been a bit of a challenge in World of Warcraft. It's always been like, how do you effectively like support one another without someone being upset? I mean, WoW toxicity is like, I could go on about that, but I'll let it leave there.
All right, no. Let's scratch at that. Toxicity against tanks.
Yeah, so I can emphasize on what Musim is saying with how do you help someone get better at the game. As I lead RPGs myself, I've been leading them for a long time, at least a couple years now, and you deal with these situations where sometimes you have to take lower XP players and you have to help them get better. So like, for instance, talking about tanks, I like to sit Guardians at bases. So like, if my Guardian loses his base, instead of yelling at him and be like, dude, what the fuck, why'd you lose your base? You know what I mean? I'll ask him what happened, and he'll explain the situation to me, and then I will explain to him what he needs to do to counter that in the future. And that's how I usually do it. I just ask questions and like, hey, dude, you lost your base. That shouldn't have happened. How did you lose your base? What happened? Who hit you? How many players was it? What buttons did you press? Tell me what you did when they opened up at your base, and like explain the whole thing to me. And we just go through the whole scenario and talk about what he did and what he should have done. And then we kind of go off of there, if that makes sense. But
that's awesome.
A lot of times in RPGs, when you join groups like LFG groups and stuff, you usually get a lot of people being defensive because people are getting angry real quick. Like, dude, like what the hell? You lost your base. You're horrible. You know what I mean? And then that's when the hostility begins, and there's no rapport, or they're not going to be receptive to feedback at that point because everyone's being hostile towards them. Does that make sense?
No, yeah. Your ears shut off when people start yelling.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, yeah, exactly. That's like one of the big, I think, as you say, barriers to entry as well from RPGs is that because the community plays with each other all the time, you've got a lot of groups that kind of run together, and you make a mistake, and everyone's like, "What? Like, how could you have possibly lost that base? Like, this game has been out for 20 years," and you forget that actually there's people that actually have just played this game like yesterday, and they've got like a level, we got levels. 60 level 70. It's going to be level 70, right? I can't even remember anymore. Like a max level character for the first time, and they're just trying stuff out, and they've got Grumpy McGee, who's very upset that his base has been lost. So I think it's a good way to kind of I think that's a good thing actually. There aren't as many people that are proactive in teaching people. People get very impatient.
All right. Who's ever lost a base that they're defending because they had their map open?
Yeah,
I mean, it happens to all of us in the beginning. We were all new players at one point, right?
Right.
So I mean,
I just lose the flag because I trinket blonde.
The ultimate problem.
So I think that the follow-up question here is like, who's played a Guardian and just sat in stealth to wait for the guy to pull up his map just to start capping?
Ooh. Not me, because I never played Guardians. So
Yeah, I don't play Guardian, but you're probably the one that capped on me there.
I mean, sometimes you're just like standing around, you're waiting for the dynamic to be right, and like, well, you see the map pop open, you're not gonna.
That's true, actually. Oh, I got it. You know what?
I mean, a little character.
Yeah.
Pop in the map. Oh,
yeah. So like, you'll literally see them pull out the map.
Yeah.
Cool.
I would say that's happened to Dro in the chat a couple of times, probably.
But yeah, I would say at the end of the day, if we want new players in the RPG community in general, then like more people need to be proactive and helping newer players learn how to play the game. But on the same note, I would say Blitz is actually BG Blitz is actually going to be a very good game mode for the game, because this is going to give inexperienced players an avenue to learn how to play without the criticism of 10v10s. I think 10v10s are a lot better than 8v8s. Don't get me wrong if we're going to get into this argument, but I think that Blitz is going to be very good for newer players who need to learn how to play the game in order to grow the player base in general.
I agree with that to an extent. I feel like it's on the community to make that happen, though, right? Like,
yeah, no, agree.
Because that, we tank. I don't know if you guys tank in PvE, but as in PvE, tanks usually are the ones. You need to know the routes. You need to know the tank swaps. You need to know, there's a lot going on as a tank, right? And I feel like in the community, if we can be vocal on a positive note, like Winters, you were saying, you actually would pull people aside and talk to them about it instead of raging and breaking the group up, which usually is what happens in an LFG when you lose that first match. Then I think that could help the RPG community if we can take it as a positive and kind of nurture the new people that are trying it out.
The thing is, though, a lot of us have done that. I've definitely, I did that a lot during WoD and Legion and Shadowlands. Like I would go out and I'd run groups, and you'd be positive minded, and you'd teach people. There was this German streamer that I kind of took under my wing for a little while. When he kind of came back to the game, and that was really fun. Like it's a kind of very almost like cathartic, but actually almost a very rewarding way of kind of giving back and sort of trying to get people involved. I just think the more you start to care about it, and I think you kind of need to come at it from like a non-caring point of view. The more you kind of start to care about it, and things start to matter more, and you're kind of like, okay, yeah, we're pushing 2-4. Actually, we're kind of really pushing quite high. When the season's still deflated, and you kind of really, everything sort of matters. You kind of find yourself kind of dipping into this sort of intensity that's not necessarily good for newer players. And I think actually if you can kind of separate the two of them and go, actually, you know what, this isn't a BlizzCon RBG final. This is just a 1600 team versus another 1600 team.
While drinking brews.
Yeah, exactly. Have a glass of whiskey and chill out. And just enjoy it, and just take people through. If people don't know, go like, that's right, we'll get it. Like, stay positive. Like, keeping morale up is such an important skill.
Huge. It's huge.
Massive. So,
I mean, the game's been around. Sorry.
No, you're right. Around for 20 years.
Yeah, like it's not going to change. Like, what's going to matter is like people just want to have fun, right? They want to queue. They want to have some good quality time. Like, no one's perfect. Stuff's going to happen, but how you interact, like, people are always going to remember how they treated, right? So. Exactly. Just being a decent person is going to go a lot farther.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think, I know we're meant to talk about tanks, and now we're talking about kind of like RPG etiquette, and I think that's kind of really cute, and I really enjoy it. I think it's distracting from the fact that there's only so much you can say about tanks, but I feel like
I do have one thing I can say about tanks.
Please do.
And this is so BGs, especially the new Blitz. I have to ask. So when I took my Vengeance DH, and if I was doing a random BG, or if I was anything like that, I felt like I was doing pretty good. Yes, I took some damage, but I still felt like I was pretty viable. But when I go into Battleground Blitz, I felt like I was just overly nerfed. Especially if I grabbed the flag, I was screwed. Like, if somebody, it looked like one to hit me, and then I was dead. Like, I couldn't even get away from anybody with all the high speed and all the extra buffs that they have. So I just want, looking at tanks and looking at the new Battleground Blitz, do you think that should we still have those same hindrances, all those penalties against us in BGB? And I'm just kind of wondering. I'm assuming everybody's very familiar and has experience on this. So, Moosin, I want to look at you first. Do you think, because don't get me wrong, I think as a tank, we get extra damage, right? We take more damage as a tank in BGs. When we grab the flag, we take more damage, right? Because there's the debuff from the flag. And I'm pretty sure that there's the lead weight debuff where we move slower, right? So
yeah, that's going to be the flag.
Yeah,
in general, it's mostly armor's reduced, just make us more soft. But I feel like, especially if we're looking at the Battleground Blitz aspect, kind of going back into, I feel like it's just a different flavor of ice cream in solo. Mm-hmm. And although I'm very optimistic because it's new content from Blizzard. Like, I'm happy. Like, give us a battleground, give us new content. Like, that's what people want, right? But to the same extent, I'm still hesitant what direction it's going to go, because kind of like what you're talking about with like this tank issue, right? So we already have some solo shuffle issues. We'd already talked about getting banned, right? And solo shuffles for things happening on. So now you're having even more people, and that means if one person messes up or isn't quite on the same page, like, it can very quickly just make the game be over for everyone, which I think is going to be a real concern, because there's just more people not having fun because of either an honest accident or, God forbid, there's a troll. So I'm actually curious what Winters would have to say on this. Like, I would think because of this, we're probably going to see some more Discord links being pushed in the Battleground blitzes. I think that would not be, like, I can see it going that direction, especially in the higher brackets. Just because obviously people want to push, and if they can organize, it's going to be better. So to that extent, Blizzard's always going to cater towards trying to, I feel like, limit the overhead. They don't want something that's completely outperforming. So to that extent, when it comes to some of these other specifics, like how tanks take damage and whatnot, I really don't see that changing.
Really? Okay. That's some Winters, actually. Yeah.
We're talking about Battleground Blitz with the flag buffs, right?
Yeah, well, Battleground Blitz, tanks taking more damage flat out, and then plus the flag debuff, the lead weight, more damage
All right,
taken.
so my opinion on that is I don't think that that should even exist in Battleground Blitz. No, solely for Battleground Blitz. Like, I don't think the stack should exist. I think that the tank should just be able to have no stacks of the flag. And the reason why I say this is because it's an 8v8 format. It's not 10v10. So you only have 2 healers, not 3. So not only that, but like, tanks already take increased damage when they're holding the flag in general. So now that they have the stacks with less healers and there's an increased mount speed in Battleground Blitz, you can't outkite people. You're taking more damage. You're going to die faster. So it's not fair for tanks. I would put up an argument that DPS players are better tanks in Blitz than tanks, because they added a new buff into the game that gives them a defensive shield and extra HP when they pick the flag up. So I think that DPS players, only DPS players in Blitz, should get the stacks when they pick the flag, and tanks should not get stacks. And again, this is just for Blitz. I think the way it's set up in 10v10 right now is in a perfectly fine standard. But also keep in mind, you mentioned that you joined Blitz as a Vengeance DH and you were dying immediately. Well, Vengeance DH is only as good as your team is. The reason why Vengeance DH is good is because of their mobility, and good Vengeance DHs have a very good team. Like, for example, a good Vengeance DH is going to have a rogue and an evoker healer with them. The evoker healer is going to pocket heal them. They're going to rescue them across the map. They're going to give them time spile for an extra leap, and then the sub rogue is going to be stunning everybody so that they can move across the map. When you go into Blitz, you don't have any teammates that are communicating with you. You don't know if you're going to have an evoker healer. You don't even know if you're going to have a rogue on your team, and who knows if this rogue is even going to help you. So you're just dead. The Vengeance DH can't kite because the increased speed that you're getting on the mount in general, you can't outrun nobody. You're just going to fall over. I would say Vengeance DH is a horrible FC for Blitz. I would never even bother it. I would argue that Blood DK is a lot better, Guardian's a lot better, but again, I think that probably Boomkin or Feral Druid is probably going to be the meta in Battleground Blitz, just because of the buff that they get when they pick the flag up.
You're not wrong, and that's why I'm talking about this. And also, I'm
a really seeing more AUG.
Oh yeah, I think you might be right. Augment as a FC. Whoa, that's
Evoker FC would be really good too.
That's
not
scary.
in Blitz.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, we're only talking Blitz right now. Only talking Blitz. Viz.
I've actually not done a ton of Blitz, so I was just trying to soak up what everybody was saying.
Okay.
I kind of agree with Winters though. I feel like that with everything that comes with being a tank, when you pick the flag up, adding extra to that just makes it less fun, right? Because like, you know, as a tank, I enjoy soaking the damage and you know, just being a live lord. But if they keep putting stacks or debuffs or making me slower depending on what class I'm on, then you know that takes the fun out of it, and that takes the will to want to queue up out as well.
Yeah, with a less healer too. If you only have 2 heals, you know, it makes a huge difference.
Yep.
Oh yeah, no, it was miserable. But funny enough, though, I still had fun, and like because it didn't matter. Like it was the brawl version. I wasn't worried about raiding, and at the end of the day, like just queued up and queue popped like within a few minutes. Like,
quick queues are always good too.
yeah, well, it was quick games, quick queues, right? It's not like it wasn't a 10-minute game coming close to a draw where everybody's sitting till max stacks, and then finally somebody blew up and a cap happened, and then you had to wait another 10 minutes before the map ended. Like, no, this was 5 minutes later, map done, on to the next one, boom, next queue, let's go, right? So that said, with rated, I could see that still being a major issue, just because then people are losing CR, having major MMR drops, which then impacts their ability to climb. So that's an issue, but that's a whole different aside. All right, that was about the only other thing that I had for an idea. Jake, do you have anything else you want to ask or talk about?
In all honesty, I genuinely think. Oh, I do. Okay, yes,
Knew it.
I don't know whether you guys played a lot of WoD, but in WoD, rogue tanks were a thing. In the sense, well, rogue flag carriers. They weren't tanks; they're rogue flag carriers. How do you feel? Like, how do you guys feel about that? Like, if you weren't flag carriers on flag maps instead, would you have more fun, or would you prefer that kind of meta? What are your thoughts on that one?
I think for me, it's not really about being the FC or not being the FC. It's about being viable in the spec. Like, you don't want to queue up in a 10v10 and be the weak link because whatever reason, right? Like if I'm able to queue up as a prot warrior and still contribute and be competitive, then I could care less if it's an AUG or a rogue or whatever. It comes back to playing the spec that I'm enjoying and still being competitive without hurting the team.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that was really well said with what Viznar said. I agree with that. Like, for me, I personally don't even like FCing. I just like playing tank. Like, I'm on blood. I like the grip and slow things, and play my class. I prefer not to run the flag. So I'm right there with them. If a rogue or invoker wants to be the FC, by all means, buddy, knock yourself out.
What do you think the kind of like place of a non-FC tank would be? Is it sort of...
Well, it depends on what they are. Like, as a blood DK, what I would do is I would just sit on either the EFC or the healer. So like I could, like, for instance, a Guardian Druid, I can lock any FC in a flag room. I can just never let them leave the flag room. So like basically I just won't let them cross the map. Another class, like a prot warrior, if he was playing prot on an FC map, and he wasn't FCing, I would be like the FC's bodyguard. I would just follow him and try to eat up any damage that he's taking, or try to go on offense and soak up the damage that your offense is taking so that they can live long enough to land a kill. Like, there's things that you could do on each class to be impactful. If I was playing Guardian, I would focus on cross-CCing healers all game, stunning them, rooting them, kicking them, typhooning them, cycloning them. If I was Vengeance DH, I would be doing the same thing as Guardian. They have a lot of sigils. They could CC, silence, fear, grip throw, imprison. There's utility there. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, that makes sense. In fact, actually, I feel thoroughly convinced. Actually, before this, I was kind of like going, yeah, well, you know what, tanks, they just FC, and that's their kind of niche role. Like, it's true. Actually, there are so many extra things you could do, and I think that's the evolution that the game has found itself, right? Like, tanks have evolved from being this one-dimensional
or a support class.
Yeah, like as we say, the support class. Yeah, you can do so much more, and I think that as an angle is way more interesting, right, in any class design than anything that has happened before. Like, I think that's definitely the future for the way tanks should be done. So yeah, I'm 100% team someone else carry it.
Well, I think a couple of things add to that, right? Like, number one, Augmenter being in the game, it shows that is a it's not the Holy Trinity anymore. There's an outlier. And then hero talents, you can change up hero talents when I go to prot to make it more utility based, where I'm soaking somebody else's damage, or like hero talents where druid you can drop down, Grove Warden or whatever, and soak that damage for anybody that's in the grove. So like there are ways to make that happen, and I think as bad as I hate fighting an augment evoker, it's kind of opened up that pathway, or that line of communication to think about tanks in that aspect.
I'd like to add on to that, like, as a tank player, if you just go into every game that you play with like, hey, how can I be impactful to my team this game? If you think that way every game, then you'll figure out how to be a valuable asset to your team instead of being useless. Like, another thing, for example, with Prot Warrior can do, because I know you play Prot, that's why we talk about Prot a lot, is that they can root people a lot, and they can fear, they can slow. Like, you can peel a lot of melee off of people, so like you can really give people a hard time trying to connect to your FC, or trying to kill whoever they're trying to kill and force them to target you instead. Just if you have the other team, if the other team is starting to turn on you and they're all starting to target you, that means you're doing a good damn job, because you're annoying the fuck out of them. You know what I mean? So if they're trying to kill you, you're doing something right. That's a good sign.
Get this guy off of me, please.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. I think that's the thing. Yeah, it's annoying rather than sort of, unkillable. Well, that's the thing. Actually, that's the thing that annoys me, is it feels like they're unkillable. And it's sort of like, if you did a 1v1 between you and a tank, right? The tank just outlasts you. They can out-heal you, outlast you, and actually probably, because they can do that, they'll out-damage you. So it's one of those sort of things where you are very annoying, especially in an RPG point of view. And I think actually you'll find that tank specs kind of will be really rising in Blitz. I think we'll see there's something happen with that. And I really hope that they do make it fun for tank players to kind of be that support spec rather than just as you say, a flag carrier. So yeah, that is the only question I had extra. I think that's all
right.
I feel very satisfied by all the answers we've had tonight.
I'm extremely satisfied, except for one thing.
Oh yes.
Here we go.
There is one thing, yeah.
There's always the one thing you would change. So again, for those who don't listen, I know we have a bunch of new listeners tonight. So the one thing we change is, if we had all the influence on Blizzard, we can make any change in the game. No cost, doesn't matter. They'll make it happen regardless of the impossibility of that change. What change would that one thing be? Winters.
Is this around tanks or anything?
Tanks in PvP.
We're gonna stay to the topic, tanks and PvP. All right, so they're gonna change one thing around tanks and PvP. I did mention this earlier. I would get rid of the mobility that happens at 6 stacks. At 6 stacks, when you have the flag, you can't move fast anymore. And this only benefits one tank spec, and it's Vengeance D8s. I think if they got rid of that, it would balance out the game a little bit, with the other tanks being able to kite a little bit better.
Okay. All right. Left to right then on my screen. Moosin, what's one thing you would change?
Oh, hi. So, I mean, we kind of talked about earlier, the diversity in the tanks. So I was sitting here thinking, like, all right, what could we change within the tanks to give more options? Because, I mean, we've covered the fact that Guardian and DH tends to be the go-to, with the other classes not being able to have, like, there's not enough exposure there for people to be comfortable with. So when Winters brings up just that slowing debuff with the flag, I mean, I feel like that across the board is probably going to be a very good thing, bringing up all the other flag carrying options. So I 100% would be like, you know what? That's better than the ideas I come up with.
All right.
Moral support. I like it.
I mean, I touch on that. Yeah, I agree with Winters. I feel like he's hit it as a tank player. He's hit it right, because as a Prot Warrior, I don't have I've got good mobility. I don't want to say I don't, but I don't have DH mobility, right? So if I'm taking a debuff on my damage, which, if I can soak, spell damage or physical attacks or whatever, that's my strength. Kiting is not my strength, but now they're adding debuffs to how much damage I take, or stacks adding up, and now I can't run. Then I think making that change would be huge.
Okay.
I also wish they would bring Glad Stance Warrior back, but that's a different topic.
Well, you only have one, so.
Yeah, fair.
All right. Jake, what's one thing you changed, man?
What about tanks?
Tanking and PvP.
So what I would do, I would bribe the devs with a lot of money to kind of like split tank. So keep them as they are for PvE, but split them in the sense of how their abilities interact with players. So rather than how it interacts with environment, how does it interact with players? I would they'd kind of introduce some systems to allow tanks to kind of be that support network, that kind of, you know, how they sort of kind of like as it is in League, I guess, kind of, you know, they don't do like a massive amount of damage, but the ones that are really true support kind of come in and do things that are so unbelievably useful that it's great. Like they have like good crowd control, they have good ways of mitigating damage, kind of like intercepting damage, great bodyguards, can be quite disruptive, that kind of thing. And I really sort of bake that more into their kit and kind of make it sort of work that way, so they're not like unbearable, but they're fun to play in that PvP aspect. I think I really double down on the support aspect of tank gameplay. That's what I do.
Okay. Interesting.
I mean, that would be not really out of the realm of possibilities with the things they could do with PvP talents and the hero talents now that they say they're going to be keeping in. Mm-hmm. You know, you make a couple of changes on how those interact and you've got a viable
But that's the
spec,
whole part.
right?
That's the whole part of this segment, though. Is it doesn't have to be viable. It doesn't have to be possible. You can make whatever happen you want.
True, but I always, you know me, Gareth, so I like to kind of make it sort of like Blizzard. Maybe you should listen to me, kind of
You
thing.
do like to be practical. You do like to be practical. So I want them. So this is going to be like a very intricate one. Normally, I know I'm not this intricate, but I want to be intricate here. I want them to implement an engineering item. So you can only make, engineers have to make it, and it's only for tanks. So you can only use it when you're in tank spec. And what you can do is you can time bomb any enemy player and then hurl them to wherever in a location. So literally pick them up and hurl, and then they're a bomb. So they blow up wherever you target reticle them to. So you can throw them into the scrum, you can throw them into enemy players, you can throw them out to Tibet, wherever you want. But I want that. And just
Vengeance
like
DH can already do that though.
yeah,
Illidan's grass.
but the person doesn't blow up.
He doesn't blow up. Okay, yeah, you got a point there.
could you throw friendly players also?
Ooh,
Just for the damage?
ooh.
I mean, you could.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, okay, let's make it anybody. Anybody.
Practically have an evoker, except without all the pyrotechnics.
Yeah. I'm going to do
I
that.
like,
Just
yeah,
'cause.
people blowing up is good. That'd be
Just
fun.
because.
I mean, in this sense.
I think the real question is, does the player like die when they blow up?
Oh yeah, they turn into a little pearl. You know that little lump of mass that's left over. That's what ends up being them.
After you chef them?
Yep. So you can chef an enemy. You can chef a friendly, and do massive damage.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought you were gonna say you wanted to nerf us after saying we only want us to push 2K in arenas.
Yeah, that's true. The bias is strong. I just want you guys to come away from this and be like, Jake's cool. Jake was on our side. Garrisol, on the other hand,
Hates us.
He's an asshole. Don't.
yeah. Get this guy DDoSed by the tank community. I don't know.
Please don't. Please don't.
Please don't.
Okay. All right. Let's get into the news.
All right. Who ordered up an extra large can of whoop ass?
All right, PvP news. A couple things have happened. Obviously, the end of the Blizzard esports. So the Mythic Dungeon International, the Great Push finished back on the 19th and the 21st. Big congrats to Echo for squeezing out the win in the last hour, literally the last hour. They squeezed out a win on that. So kudos to them. I'll be honest, I was actually really surprised. It looked like they were on the ropes. Of course, this is Echo. That's usually when they come out and really they pull through. But it was looking really close. I was actually really thinking that it was going to be some of the other teams. So huge congrats to them. Dungeon Dojo Invitationals also happened just last weekend. So big congrats to those winners. I'm not going to go through it all. They had 3 tiers of dungeon runs. So yeah, anyway, lots of people, lots of teams. I think really the big winner was they were doing a charity run for Make-A-Wish, and really that was the biggest winner. So kudos to them. Hot fixes. Season of Discovery got a bunch. That's about it. I don't think really anything like jumped out as being PvP though. So I'm not gonna really worry about that. Yeah, it's all PvE stuff. So ta-da. And if anybody hasn't known, so The War Within Season 1 starts on the 10th of September. So whether you have the early access or regular access, we have, I think, is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks now? My math is bad.
Ish.
2-ish weeks. Yeah, 2-ish weeks. So you have 2-ish weeks to level mains and alts, and then Season 1 will start on the 10th of September. So plan accordingly. I'm just gonna put this out here. With how the pre-patch was and the number of bugs that are currently in the game and the number of bugs that are already in the beta and not looking like they're going to really go anywhere. Hopefully they'll fix them, but chances are day 1 and 2 are probably going to be a bit of a bust. So let's just bank on 2 weeks and yeah. All right. That's that. Oh, and speaking of bugs, Jake, did you see this one?
Which one was it?
The War Within beta bugs. The players randomly dying.
Oh yes, yeah, I did see that. I do see that. Nethy, I think, tweeted about it. It's you know what? It feels like the pre-patch and the beta. It's still going to be in beta. I think you're right. Like, I think we just got to be prepared for this elongated period where they've clearly like not been able to catch up in time. I think that's the saddest thing. I think obviously Blizzard are going through a lot. At the minute, there has been a lot of issues, I suppose, is probably the best way of putting it, which I think are now kind of getting there. But it just feels like the changes with Mets and everything has left a kind of gaping hole in kind of them catching up on things, and it's a shame to see so many bugs.
Yeah, I remember seeing bugs in beta, but not like this, not this close. So, I mean, if anybody's experienced this or seen this, but in the beta right now, you may just die randomly, and nobody really knows why. It's, you know, the clip here that we're talking about has Nethy, is a warlock, have up their wall, and they still like just 100 to 0. Nobody hitting them, nobody knows why. Just they died. Yeah.
That's how it is.
Yeah, just arena things, just PvP things.
Just easy.
Last but not least, just saw this on a Discord actually. Not Skill Caps, which is kind of funny, but Skill Capped is actually looking for a PvP video editor. So they have a bunch of positions open. A large number of them are actually for Mythic Plus, script writers and videos and all that other stuff. But on the PvP side, they're looking for another PvP video editor. So if you have the ability to edit videos and you have a deep knowledge of PvP, well, look in the show notes. There's going to be a link to a Google Doc, which is their application form, and you might become the next Skill Cap video editor. So, all right, shout outs. People in our community and our lives, people that are dear to our hearts. First and foremost, Moosin, is there anybody you would like to shout out?
You know what? Yeah, I'd like to shout out Drax. He apparently heard of me and brought you guys to hear of me. So, I mean, I wouldn't be here without that gentleman. So, shout out to him as well as all my wonderful viewers. I mean, I wouldn't be here going through like this very interesting couple years of life without their support. So, I appreciate that. Appreciate y'all.
That's awesome. Winters.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give a shout out to Drux as well for recommending me to come onto this podcast. It was a good time.
All right, Jake.
Me? Okay. I wasn't prepared for me to go next. I think I'm gonna shout out. I don't know. I'm really put on the spot. Go someone else quick. I'll think.
Okay. I'm gonna shout out Big, because he's here in spirit but not here in person. And without him, I wouldn't have the lovely camera frames for all these lovely gentlemen, and just all the other stuff that he does on the side. He's right now, he's actually helping his girlfriend move, if you can imagine that. He chose his girlfriend over us. Like, oh man.
Responsibilities.
I know. Huge shout out to him. All right. Viznar, who are you going to shout out?
I've known Dro too long to shout him out, so I'm not going to do that. I've known him for, I don't know, several expansions. But just shout out the homies from my guild. That's why I'm playing now. Berserker / the Inner Circle on Mal'Ganis. I've known those guys and girls for years. We've had a meet and greet that, we had like 12 people show up to, so that was kind of cool. So just a couple of them have been in chat giving me shit about tentacles, but that's a different conversation. So just shout those folks out for supporting.
So what's the name of the guild?
Originally it was Berserker. Currently it's the Inner Circle, and we're deciding on what to do with it.
All right. Deciding on what to do with the guild is a tough spot to be, not gonna lie. All right, Jake, have you made a decision yet?
Yeah, I have. I've decided the person I need to shout out is my lovely girlfriend, who is currently listening to me while she's trying to sleep spew weird incantations about tanks and RPGs and acronyms she has no idea about. So big shout out to her for putting up with that.
Oh, that is lovely that she's putting up with you. That is lovely. All right. I'll be honest. I was going to shout out Drew as well. You guys all beat me to it. But if it wasn't for him, this episode wouldn't have happened, because I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I just could never make it work. And he literally handed me y'all. So I appreciate him. All right. Last but not least, just because we like to hear and give y'all a platform to make sure people can find you. So first to you, Viznar, where can people find you?
I'll be starting streaming again. Like I said, it's Viznar_Twitch. And then I randomly retweet on X at _Viznar. Usually Warcraft or Warhammer stuff, but both those locations.
All right. Moosin.
Yeah, I normally streaming on Twitch, as well as you'll see me do YouTube videos, Guardian Guides on YouTube. And then I also have an X account that lets you know when I'm alive. So, yeah.
Cool.
It's all going to be at Moosin. I'm sorry, Moosin_gaming, all of them.
Moosin_gaming.
Yeah.
Easy to find. And Winters.
So I stream RPGs a lot of tank content, high-rated RPGs. You can find me at Bloodbound Winters on Twitch. I also run a PvP guild that I've been running since MOP. We focus on creating RPG teams and helping players learn. That is also called Bloodbound. That's where my Twitch name comes from, Bloodbound Winters. But you can find me either in my guild or on Twitch.
Cool. Sorry, I should have done this first. Bloodbound, what server?
It's on Sarg. I mean, all guilds are cross-realm now.
Fair. Okay. Yeah. Of course. And sorry, Viznar, yours, I know it's cross-realm, but where's yours to be homed?
Mal'Ganis.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Jake, you got the deal.
Yeah.
You want to tell everybody where we are?
Yeah, I can, absolutely. The double deal today. You can contact us directly with a tweet to @technically_PvP, or by an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on the Bonus Roll Production Discord. And if you want, you can also visit the Bonus Roll website to find the podcast directory with us and many other great shows at www.bonusroll.gg. This directory also has a review system. So head on over there and tell everyone what you think of your favorite shows, including our own.
Indeed. And as always, links for everything we talked about are going to be in the show notes. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll chat with you next time. Good night, everybody.